I've got 6 o'clock if we want to kick this off. And first, I'd like to start this meeting the way we start all of our meetings, with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able to rise and join me, please do. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, folks, for coming out tonight. The screens and the tech in the room is down. We're in the middle of an upgrade, which is actually a pretty exciting project. We're going to get some better cameras and microphones in this room. And it's not costing the taxpayers anything. So it's an exciting project that we're looking forward to getting done. So we're going to have to just go with a handout. And I'm sorry this handout says Joint Building Committee. My printer died in the middle of me trying to put this together. So this is actually a public forum and not a joint building committee. But it's really a recap of information that was shared recently. Thank you if you want to put it behind you. So once everybody gets a copy, I'll just briefly walk you through the first few slides and kind of recap what we're discussing with the project. And then I'll turn it over to Gordon Bristol, is the person handing out forms here. Gordon is our owner's project manager, and Gordon will speak a little bit, and then we'll just throw it open for people to share what they'd like to share. So there's really, like I said, there's nothing new in here. The first slide you're looking at was the existing conditions, which shows in the grayscale. It didn't print great, but there's three kind of fingers of wetland that cross the property to as you move from east to west. The second slide is a very preliminary site plan. This is still being reworked as we speak. This is one possibility of what could happen. We're still playing with how to best fit things into the space. The next slide starts to get into programmatic. How many classrooms and where are they and how they're arranged together. I think the big takeaway here is that in the L shape, the part of the L towards the bottom of the page is all spaces of the building that could lend themselves to public use after hours. It's the auditorium, it's the cafeteria, it's the main office. So all of that is kind of easily sectioned away from the rest of the school. At the corner of the L, you've got library, music, art, that sort of thing. As you move down to the other end of the L at the top of the page to the right, you've got first grade and kindergarten. First grade and kindergarten have to discharge this level on the first ground floor. They can't be up on the second floor. The next page shows you the second floor, which is, it's not the full L is not 2 stories. Only part of the building will be 2 stories. And that part that is 2 stories will house some special education resources. It will house 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, as well as an elevator and another set of stairs for egress. So I want to point out that tonight is the last of the 3 public forums. Moving forward, there will be joint building committee meetings in this room. The next one is scheduled for September 13th. It'll be 6 o'clock in this room, and there will be public comment on that agenda, so people will still be afforded an opportunity to come and speak. We're also sharing out these drawings with staff, and we've set up 3 Zoom meetings to solicit feedback from teachers and paras and people that are actually, working in our buildings to get their feedback on things they see that they like, things maybe they don't like, what they think will work, what they think we need to be considering. So we want to get all the stakeholders' voices heard. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Gordon Bristol and let him kind of go over the road ahead. Do you have some?
I've passed out my handouts already.
Oh, look at you.
Thank you, and I'll just come up here because he's got the camera going. Hello, come to meet you all again, and I've given a little handout to tell you sort of where are we at and where are we going, so that you know what the next couple months look like. So, as you know, the land has been purchased. We have made a recommendation to the Joint Building Committee of an architect, which is Banwell, and that'll be talked at the September 13th meeting. There's also been the recommendation after interviews of having Harvey as the construction manager, and again, that will be hopefully acted upon at the September 13th meeting. And myself is on board, and thank you for this opportunity. So what happens next? Right now, we continue to modify the design, and it was just alluded to a moment ago, this is when we start talking to the staff about specifics that they may have. So as you have staff meetings, for example, the gym teacher would say, well, I've always had problem with storage, so let's make sure we have plenty of storage this time. Okay, well, how much do you have now? How much do you think you need? You might have a science teacher that says, well, you know what, we don't use beakers anymore. Everything is done this way. Okay, well, we want to incorporate what you're using as a protocol here in Rochester. So it gives us a chance to find out what the peculiarities of this particular school are, what your latest and greatest, the best practices are that you're doing, okay? We also get some input from the faculty. What do you think about a learning area in your room? Some may say, you know what, for kindergarten areas, yes, we definitely need to have a place to gather on the floor, but in an upper grade, no, we don't. So that's the kind of thing that what's going on currently in Rochester, and we also look at what is going on in the future. So that design will be your architect firm and also including your staff. And that includes, besides just the faculty, the staff, for example, will talk with the maintenance folks and say, okay, what's been your pet peeve? Well, gee, you know, every time we go to use this particular type of washing machine on the floor, we never can get it to the second floor. You know, okay, well, we've got an elevator. That problem is now taken care of. Well, what do you think we should have here? Should we have this kind of scrubber or that kind of scrubber? Now's the time to capture everybody from all the disciplines, all right? So it isn't just the teaching disciplines. We start with your budget, and here's the theory that's most important for you all in this room to know. You're going to hear us talk about it for the next 2 years. You only have this amount of money, whatever that amount of money is. It's between all the funds that you put together, it's this 33 million and so forth. We don't suddenly come back to you with a building that says, oh, we got a great building, but it's 37 million. Let's go back to the well. No, what the well has in it is what the well has in it. So we do what I call a work backwards. We start with the dollar amount you have, and we're going to start with those items that we know that the school needs to buy. So we'll take a room like this, for example, and you say, what subtracts from construction? Well, if you look at a room like this, who's paying for the whiteboards? Who's doing the podiums? Who's doing the desks? Who's doing the chairs? Because you don't want to build a building and then you suddenly go, oh, by the way, we need $2 million to buy furniture. We start at the beginning with all that. So we'll come up with a list of what's called owner purchased items. And we give that a very intelligent guess. We've been doing this for years. So what we do is we'll meet, for example, on classroom furniture. We'll meet with WB Mason. There's other companies that you use here locally. I forget the name, but you have a real good vendor that you currently are using. We'll have 3 or 4 vendors in, and they'll say, this is what a typical classroom looks like. We haven't committed to anybody. We just start with that dollar amount. What's a conference room like this cost? And then we plug it in, and that subtracts from what we have, and then that's what's left for the construction manager to actually build the things that are mortar, the things that you're paying 20 years to own. The walls, the ceiling, the floors, the HVAC system, that sort of thing, okay? So you'll see that figure talked about, and that's something we'll be doing in the next month, month and a half, because we will go out and we'll look at the plans, and you know, it's got a principal and an assistant principal's office. Okay, well, we don't have an assistant principal now. Is the principal bringing his or her furniture over with them, or are they expecting new furniture? We'll get to that level of detail. So a lot of detail is starting already just on generic rooms, be you a principal or a guidance counselor. What's the nurse's needs? The nurse suddenly says, you know, it's good for me to have 2 sick bays. One's not enough. Or maybe we should have 3 sick bays. We take all that into account. Concurrent with that, we'll be talking with various departments in the town. The fire department's one of the big one, and the police department's a big one. We want to make sure that the flow of the building that we're projecting is going to be one that works. Can the fire trucks get in there and get around to those parts of the building that they want to get around? We still have time to modify whether we have a big glass wall here or whether we have a front door that's wood or a front door that's glass. We have time for all that, but it's, are you happy with where the front door is, police department? Are you happy, fire department, where we're thinking of bringing in your water? So that's just a long answer to what does this sheet mean, but now's the time to think about this. I also make a statement, because I'm new to you. We do all of our best designing and our best thinking before you ever dig with a shovel. Once we dig with a shovel next year, the horse is already down the field. We've already decided how many parking places you're going to have. You've already decided how many flagpoles you're going to have out front. There's no time now to save the money. Right now is when we look at value engineering everything and getting you the best bang for your buck. One of the things I failed to mention is we also, in a budget that you're going to see in a couple months, is we carry a contingency figure. We know from historically that you're going to bump into certain things. Now, we carry a less of a contingency figure in new construction than you do in old construction. Because in old construction, you think you're going to take this wall down, and you suddenly go to take it down, and you find out that nobody ever knew there was an old beam up here that went somewhere. Well, now you got a $10,000 problem. We shouldn't have those $10,000 problems happening all the time in a new building. There's also current software that we'll be using that's worth its weight in gold, that we actually can, you program the whole building so you see where things go. You can walk through a wall and see what happens when you go down the hallway. So we aren't going to hit obstacles that are going to basically cost you money. And then the last thing, I've talked a lot about the money, but it's really about the kids. And that is what we keep in mind the most throughout this entire, how's it going to flow for the children? Is it going to be safe? And sadly, we do have safety. That's the first school I ever built. I never spent anything on safety. Now we're spending $400,000 and $500,000 on doors and locks and bulletproof glass or bullet-resistant glass places. So we'll have a certain amount of that as well, because we know we live in a world that can change any minute. But that's all I have. I don't want to, any questions of me before you have the general questions? Yes, young lady.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed your name and your title.
Sorry, I'm
Your
Gordon Bristol.
expertise is?
I'm Gordon Bristol. And I'll be sitting right
Bristol?
next to you, so I'll write it down for you
Okay.
when I come over and sit
And your
down.
expertise?
My expertise is I actually represent you as the town and the school board. I'm what's called the owner's representative. My job is to make sure that your needs are carried through and that the school department gets everything that they're paying for.
So you're paid for by the school?
Yes, to represent the school, because your current administrator should have plenty to do every day running a school and not trying to run a $30+ million school project. So it's prudent, and also that it's prudent to have someone like myself on site. And in fact, the state of New Hampshire now requires it because it protects schools so well.
Do you happen to know whether traffic studies have been done or not? Or the wetland studies? Those are the important issues that came out of the last two meetings that we
Sure.
had.
And I'm happy if Mr. Toddy overrules me. If I present something wrong, feel free to say, guess what, Gordon, you heard that wrong today. The wetland studies have been essentially complete. They haven't totally been complete, because we certainly want to look at, we're looking at a next level of the wetlands, which doesn't involve anything with any hazardous species that might be on the land. But yes, wetlands has preliminary been done.
So the wetlands have been located beyond the preliminary. It's now a stamped drawing. We know where all the jurisdictional wetlands are. So the next two things that will happen with that is we're going back out to do the second round of test pits. We're trying to get that on the calendar now. The first round of test pits were done preliminary. We're looking at it from a feasibility point of view. These next will be soil mapping test pits. It's like the next level of exploration underground. That'll be followed by test borings. We're holding off on the test borings because what we're trying to work through now is situating, and now that we know exactly where the wetlands are, the drawing that you have is preliminary. We don't want to just say, okay, that's a drawing, great, let's build that. We're really taking some time to explore all of the options and to see, we want to maximize the use of the space. So that's what the civil engineers are working on.
David, have you had conversations with DES?
Yes, we haven't actually filed the formal application because the formal application is going to be a function of where we decide to put the building. So that's the piece that we're still trying to get the final footprint of everything lined up. When we do, we will move forward with any.
And what about traffic studies?
Traffic studies have been engaged. They were waiting, so we had numbers already from, I think it was like the last day of school that was done by Stratford County Regional Planning.
That's preliminary.
I understand, so what we want to do is wait to get students back in school to start to get a look at a snapshot of Salmon Falls Road on a school day. I know there's not a school there now, but traffic across the whole city is definitely affected by whether schools are in session or not. So we're waiting to get kids back in school, and then we'll get more tubes and we'll get manual counts going. They were preliminarily scheduled for the 20th, but we realized that's an early release day. And again, an early release, even though there's not a school right there, an early release may have some impact across the entire city on what traffic looks like everywhere. So we want to make sure that we capture something accurate. But we're looking right around the 20th, we'll have counts going again on Salmon Falls Road.
So I have about 12 questions and a couple statements. I know you probably don't like it, but.
No, but let's do this. We'll have you go to the podium once he's
Yeah.
finished. Yep.
Okay.
So were there any more questions from committee, or we're going to go over to public at this point?
Sorry.
That's quite, that's fine, that's fine. All right, so,
All right.
Gordon,
Yep.
thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
So, yeah, do you want to, please, come on up.
Sure.
There's a sign in right there.
Little different format than the other public forums.
Yeah, well,
So, that's fine, we'll get through it. So Ray Wayman, 55 Ida Circle. Yeah, I'll write that. You should know me by now.
Just don't want to forget you.
You'll never forget me. So, when I was a kid, 1972-ish, a small town called Susquehanna, Pennsylvania, they built a brand new elementary school. Probably only about $2 million at that time. They built it right on a swamp. And it's sinking. Every few years, they have to go out for bid, repair the floors, crack floors, reinforce the foundation, and do a lot of work on it. It's costing them, how many years later, 40 years or something like that. Still costs them a lot of money. I just want to put that out there. The new wetland that was found at the beginning of the property from the last survey, how many acres is that?
I don't know the square foot of that right off the top of my head. Sorry.
So the estimated 1 acre, 2 acres?
I think it's less than that.
Less than an acre?
Yeah.
So that takes your 12 acres down to 11, something maybe? Then a buffer?
Well, it actually kind of becomes the buffer. We were considering leaving green space on that end of the property anyway. So the wetland actually becomes green space on that end of the property.
So then there's a buffer around it, so that leaves you enough space to squeeze in something, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It leaves us enough space to achieve our objective of a new school.
When is this, the budget for the school going to be presented to the city council for approval or denial? Does anybody have a date on that yet, or is that too
So
far
what do you
out?
mean by budget?
Well, there's a budget for, what I understand, maybe I'm wrong, there's going to be a X number of dollars that's going to be approved by the city council to build the school. Has that been decided already? Did I miss that, or is that going to be presented to the city council?
No, so I'm working with the city manager to get on the calendar, so it'll probably be late September, maybe early October, but she'll have that date. It'll be on the agenda soon.
So the city council could theoretically say, no, we're not going to fund this.
No, because they've already done a resolution to approve the project, so their next resolution will be how to fund the remainder of the project. So it won't be, no, we're not funding it. They already made a resolution to fund. Their next resolution will be how they choose to fund the remainder. So whether or not they say bond the whole project or choose to use other items in the budget.
Okay, so it could be bonding or whatever. Okay, all right, thank you for that. You know, I mean, I'm sure at the city council there will be a public comment period at that time where people can say whatever their piece is. When you say you work backwards from the well, the money's in the well now already? Or we don't have an exact figure in the well yet?
So the exact number, and if you go to this PowerPoint with all the documents that are online, you can actually see the intent to fund memo from the state on our website. So it's like a $33 million project. They're giving us about $15 million.
Right.
So the remainder will be funded through the city at some point.
So you say about, though. Is it 33 million or is it?
The exact dollar
30?
amount's there, yeah. I can't tell you like the change, 33 point something, okay?
So the well has been funded, or
So the
filled
project,
up, or whatever you want to call it, right?
well, no, so the project has been approved,
Right.
okay? I'm not following your analogy, but, so the project has been approved, right? It cost X.
Right.
Then part of X is being funded by the state.
Right.
That's the 15 point something.
Correct.
The remainder is the Y of the equation, and that will be up for the city to decide how they'd like to fund the remainder of the project.
Right. But the number has been determined.
Yes, sir.
So as Mr.
Right.
Gordon says, the well is full up,
So the dollar amount for the project has been
is
approved.
set,
Yes.
right? So anything we run into would fall into that contingency period if there would be extras, and then above that would go to city council for additional approval, or that's it? Would they get no more and work with it? Is that how that works?
Yes. The project is $1 amount. Yes.
Okay, great. And so all the work that's already been done, like the site study and the wetlands checking and hiring Mr. Gordon and paying Banwell and Ty and Bond, is that money coming out of that budget, or is it our separate budget for that?
That's the same project. So this is all one big project with all the pieces of it.
So they're already being paid out of those funds, or will be when they send a bill?
Will be when they approve a contract, yes.
So they're working without a contract right now, is that correct?
We hired the architect for initial studies, and then they'll be hired for the full term of the project should the JBC approve the contract.
Okay, I'm just trying to learn where the money's coming from and what's happening. Like, I mean, there's stuff out there all over about this or that, so I like to kind of deal in facts, you know, so that's why I asked the questions.
Sure.
Thank you for your answers. And there's gonna be no more public forums,
So we have JBC meetings every
Right.
month. Yep,
but there's gonna be no forums like this.
correct.
Okay. So Belmont Police over in Massachusetts, you probably heard about this. Over in Massachusetts, there's a school, Belmont School. There's so many cars passing through and parents delivering their kids to school that the police are saying, don't drive your kids to school. Put them on the bus. And if you drive your kids to school, park a block away. When we have the same problem on Salmon Falls Road, a block away is my driveway. I don't want people parking in my driveway. How are we gonna keep them out of my driveway? You know, we gotta think about that. We're gonna have the same problem. What I'd really like to do is see 270 cars on Salmon Falls Road, 135 coming each way at the same time, try to make a turn into, we could use our Ida Circle for a test and see what kind of, you know, craziness that would actually involve that we're gonna see every morning. But I think that's it. Yep. So thank you for your answers. Mr. Toddy, I know, and Mr. Rupici, I know you've done a lot of work for a number of years, but, you know, living next door to this place, Mr. Bowden will probably agree with me that this is an awful location. Yes, I'd love to have a school in my backyard. Fantastic, you know, it raises your property values, everything. But, man, it's going to be a 100-year albatross. Really, it is. It's just terrible. And too bad, you know, we're so far in, we can't change now. Too bad we couldn't been planning ahead a little bit better. I know you checked all the properties, Mr. Tidy. I'm sure it was a lot of work. But I think a little more could have been done to find a better piece of property. I'm certain there's 3 of them out there that just sold around the same area that probably would have fit the bill. Maybe if we contacted those landowners before, they would have sold earlier. Maybe you did. I can't confirm that, but it's a done deal. Obviously, nobody cares. There's like 12 people that shows up, so good luck on your school. I hope you make it pretty. Put nice trees along the road that separates our property from the school. Make a little cut through there and, you know, enjoy your property, right? You beat me down. You beat me down, that's what happened. So, thank you for your candor.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, board members. My name is Tabitha Davis. I am a resident of Rochester. I have been to many meetings and watched the meetings that I could not attend. At the last meeting, it was confirmed that there was concern about the wetlands. Do we need a new school? Yes. Because the ones we have now can't have add-ons to be built on or even built up on them. We all know the location is a bad idea. So here's a few questions I have to be answered. I do know some of the answers, but the public does not know. Number one, with the location, kids can't walk to school. So what is your plan for those kids who live in the mile range of that school? Do I go on to the next question, or?
Please, yeah.
Okay. Question number two, do
Call
we,
that crickets.
do we need to add sidewalks on Salmon Falls Road? And if so, is that in the budget already? Or is it something that the taxpayers have to pay, or who is going to pay for that? That is question two. Question three, if there is an issue with building and we go over the budget, who is responsible for paying the difference? Because we all know we go over the budget on projects in the district. Number four, if the contract company you hired start digging and come to the conclusion that they can't get the foundation or build because of the wetlands, what is your plan about the whole situation? The reason why for that question is because we really won't know anything until we start digging. We won't know what's in the ground. Question five, yeah.
So yeah, let me just grab a couple of those. I guess I take exception to the comment that we all know we go over budget on projects in the district, because since I've been director of facilities in the district, I haven't gone over budget on anything I've done. And I've spent tens of millions of dollars on projects, and we have never gone over budget. So I don't know, we all know that the district was over budget on projects. It's hard for me to swallow, because I have on a facilities project, on a construction project, gone over budget since I've been in your employ. So that's one thing I would throw out there. I don't know if you can name some that we've gone over budget on, because that would be helpful support for that. The other comment that we won't know what's underground. We already know where the wetland is. We know where the wetland is. We've already determined that. So we know that the stuff that isn't in the wetland is area that we can build on. And we've already done exploratory test pits. We're going back to do additional soil mapping, but we already have a real good idea of what's out there. We know exactly where the wetlands are, and we've already had geotechnical experts dig a dozen test pits. So we do know a lot about what's going on. Right now, with the knowledge that we have, we're working to try to fit it into that site. You asked about sidewalks, I think was question one, and we discussed at an earlier forum that the school project is the locus of the school. Anything outside of the locus of the school would not be a school project. So sidewalks would have to be a different consideration. Whether or not there's money for that somewhere, I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. I don't want to speak to that.
Well,
And I think just to add to the walking, at JBC, the board members of our board discussed the possibility of changing the policy for that school. So again, that'd be something that would be considered after the project is well underway and it comes to fruition, and then they can make a decision on how that would come out depending on what decision the city were to make.
Yeah.
So then I think one of your questions was, when this all goes bad and when you can't do it, what's our plan? And I think, I'll go back to what Mr. Bristol said. We're doing all of this work now so that that doesn't happen, right? We're doing the reason we've been out here doing civil engineering due diligence, the reason we've had environmental scientists walking the land, the reason we've had geotechnical engineers digging holes, the reason we're going back with more soil scientists to do more soil mapping, the reason we're doing all of that is so that before a shovel strikes dirt, we know that this project is going to succeed, this project is going to work. And everything, every domino, every box along the way, every piece that we've had to check, every professional licensed engineer that has spoke, knowledgeable people who have spoke on the subject, said, yeah, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. So I don't know how to address.
And I can add to that, if I could, on the construction side, we basically bid everything out. So it's not like your house where you're gonna build a home and you say, well, I don't really know what kind of carpet I might put in the bedrooms upstairs. When we have a spec book, and the entire project, as I said, is bid out, and we know that we can build that for this amount of dollars before we start. Now, or we don't start it. We would value engineer it, and suddenly you'd say, well, guess what? Instead of being a 68,000 square foot building, it's going to be a 66,000 square foot building. And we'd make those decisions, but we can't in good conscience on the construction side start until we know we have everything basically bought out to finish. That's your safety valve there.
Thank you.
Does that get you caught up to your?
It does. I knew the answers. It's just, these are a lot of the questions that the public had, so I figured I'd ask them so that the public would know about these answers. I mean, the questions that I asked. So that's why I asked them, because the sidewalks are a big, big thing. And the kids walking, I do agree, especially the committee, to change the policy, have the buses pick them up instead of walking, because obviously it is, a busy road. So the joint would be fantastic. The other question I had, probably for Kyle, when you get to the new school and you're doing the classroom with the whiteboards and the TVs and the desks and all that stuff, are you using the stuff that's already in the annex school that's going to be getting closed, or the Chamberlain? Can you use any of that stuff to the new school?
Some of the technology may be used, but this will be, again, all of the ordering will take place through the JVC. So as Gordon mentioned, through the month of September, we're meeting with all of the staff members are going to be given the opportunity to speak and share thoughts about what should be part of the new school. So we'll take all those ideas and then we're going to present them back to the JVC. And I'm just making it up. We have Promethean boards in certain schools, or nice big TVs like this to project. It could be a decision of the JVC to choose one product over another product. That'll be the voice of the JVC.
Oh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Ross, 159 Townwide Road. Interesting comment, Susquehanna, Pennsylvania. You know that area very well. There's one even closer, in Newton Junction, New Hampshire, the Sanborn Regional Middle School. About the same time frame, building a school in a swamp. Wetland delineation in New Hampshire is classified based on specific criteria by New Hampshire DES. Classification is primarily determined by vegetation, hydrology, and soils present in the area. Generally, all three of those criteria must be present and identified and classified as wetlands. In other words, it is possible to have land which meets only one or two of those three criteria and not be classified as wetlands. In this case, the quote-unquote dry area could potentially have one or more of those criteria, but not all three to meet the entire criteria. Building in this area could pose several health-related conditions due to the unique environmental conditions associated with wetlands. We have wetlands to the front, we have wetlands to the back. Air quality. Wetlands can produce high levels of humidity, which might exacerbate respiratory issues for children with asthma and other breathing conditions. Allergens. Wetlands can harbor mold and fungi, which can lead to increased allergen exposure for our children who are sensitive to these substances. Vector-borne diseases, mosquitoes and ticks. Common vectors for diseases like West Nile virus, Lyme disease are very common in wetlands. There is an awful lot of wildlife in that area. These also pose additional health challenges. Wildlife exposure also equates to sometimes to disease transmission. My second concern is the second means of egress using the proposed 50-foot right-of-way onto Ida Circle. Ida Circle is not a road accepted by the city. It is still technically a private road. It is my understanding that many outstanding issues regarding road construction and drainage still exist. As a private road with a non-deeded right-of-way of both the roadway and the 50-foot connection to this adjacent parcel does not automatically grant one the authority to utilize it. Private is private. Private property, and until it is formally deeded and recorded at the Registry of Deeds, I don't think you have the right to use that. In fact, it could potentially never become a city-owned roadway and easement. It could remain private with the landowners and the homeowners of the subdivision to opt to forming a homeowners association and retain this to protect their investment. That might solve the problem in your neighborhood. It's a private road. If the developer feels to fix the outstanding punch list, which I have put in a 91A request to the planning department last Thursday and still have not heard back, but through somebody else who is a city councilor, he has informed me that there is a punch list. The city could call the bond and do the work themselves, but that is a long process. A deal could be worked out with the current developer and landowners to prevent the city from ever acquiring this ownership. And where does that really leave this school? It was my understanding that there has to be two means of access into that property. Now on to the Chamberlain Street, Franklin Street. The city-owned quote-unquote forest or so-called conservation land, I do not believe this has ever been formally deed restricted for this use by the city. Just because a label is attached does not mean it proceeded with the correct deed restrictive use language. That leads to the next point, that the money follows the project, not the land. As I understand it, there are a few more months in which you can identify property to build this school and make the necessary amendments with the state and not compromise the current building project and planning out this building. That, my friends, is called due diligence. We are probably not the first school district, nor will we be the last to identify property and has had to change its course. Do not let your pride stand in your way. From a very casual observation, it appears sufficient land is available on this site and also alleviate the massive traffic pileup each day at the Chamberlain Street School. It would also alleviate the sore subject of sidewalks, a source of much discussion in our community. To build a school in the middle of wetlands with, at this point, compromising soil types, which could in turn lead to significant building costs if pilings are needed to be drilled, is frankly not using common sense. My opinion. School buildings are not built the same way as standard construction, and a solid foundation to support the 2 stories is needed. We already know that drainage needs to be placed under the playground just feet away from the school. Take the next couple of weeks, do the research at Chamberlain, and see if the work already completed for this school simply cannot be transferred to another site. As for the current parcel, let the city designate this as an ecological natural resource park for its residents. Thank you.
I
got one.
Yep.
I'll be brief.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Dave Leclerc. I live at 745 Paulin Street. I border the annex school, right? Yeah, which they did a great job with. Wish they built a little larger, but that's okay. Like I say, I'm on Portland Street, and I've dealt with the Katy Lane project for years, so I know there's water. There's water in all of East Rochester. And last week, I came to this meeting. We were a week early, unfortunately. But I measured from the top of Salmon Falls Road, Portland Street, to the site. It's 1.5 miles. So if you're talking 2 sidewalks, that's 3 miles of sidewalks. You know, I just want you to consider that as well. I also worked at Chamberlain. I worked for the school district. There is room there. I don't know about the land out back, but there is room. You could kind of split the building in half with a new kindergarten tower and kick it out. And does this land come out on Whitehall at all? I heard it touched there, but I've heard it's real wet, and it's quite a ways away. So that would be an option.
There's no frontage on it.
And this gentleman here, I feel you at either circle, because getting out of my driveway at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon has been a bear. And I one time called Harry, said I'm gonna be late. And I also said I was gonna call the police at 9:11, I can't get out of my driveway to go to work, so. I really hope you can find a better location, but you must, but Salmon Falls is a busy road. And I don't see any Tara residents here, but I'm sure they're not too happy either. That's all I got. Funny, I don't see Peter Norris here. You don't do it pretty well.
Good evening, everybody, members of the building committee. My name is Cliff Newton. I'm a state representative, and I'm serving my 5th term, or 10th year in the State House representing the people. I'm also on the building committee at the county for the new nursing home that we're building, but I'm not here representing them. I'm here to represent the people. And I want to tell you the story of what we've been through at the county with a nursing home which started as a $170 million project. So it's not a small project, it's a rather large project. And here's what we went through. And there's a lot of similarities. It started in around April 22 in earnest to go with a new nursing home. And by August, we were showing conceptual plans. Beautiful plans like you guys have seen, showed the wetland, showed where the building was going to go. Our building was going to be in a field, what we thought was a field. Not what you're facing with this building, but in a field. Well, it went on, and we saw the plans, got the conceptual, looked okay, it looked a little extravagant. And in December, we were asked to vote on it. And I believe the process here is similar, where an appropriation is made and voted on, but that's a check with no signature. You now have to get the bonding to pay for the appropriation, and that requires a separate vote. In Stratford County, an appropriation only requires a majority. However, to get bonding, it requires 2/3, and that's a big hill to climb. So it came before us in December for a vote, and the delegation, by almost a 2-to-1 majority, voted the appropriation for the new nursing home. They had sharpened the pencil a little because there was a little people concerned about the price of it. Maybe 20 million around there. So when it came time to vote for the appropriation passed, when it came time to vote for the bonding failed. because I didn't vote for it because there was too many unanswered questions. We didn't have complete information. It doesn't sound like you guys have it either on the wetlands. And the actual things in Stratford County, there was issues of architectural burial sites of Indians and other things they had to look at. So what was done was a $6.2 million bonding appropriation was made to continue to go forward so it wouldn't stall the project. We didn't want to not go forward with this because the existing nursing home is 50 years old. So we wanted the $6.2 million and said just kind of go forward, try to answer the questions, get more details on the site where we're going to build it, and you know, let's be more sure of what we're doing before we do the whole thing, because $150 to $170 million is a lot of money for the taxpayer. So that went forward for almost 7 months. The building committee never met, and then we met August 15th of this year. And it's made up of 3 and 4 7 members. And when we met on the 15th, lo and behold, some things that came out that you folks really need to consider, and I'm here to warn you. I'm here to give you a warning. I've given it to the mayor. I've given it to a city council member, and I'm here to give it to you. I have no position on whether or not to build a new school. That's your business. That's what you guys have decided. You're trying, if you're doing what the delegation's doing and the building committee, you want the best product for the citizens of Rochester for the best price. And if you're not here to do that, then you shouldn't be here. So I'm going to read, you know, we did in the fall of 22, which was before we took the vote, December 5th for the appropriation, there were wetlands and different tests done. And I'm just going to read the first paragraph of the preface. This is the new nursing home plan, and this is available on the county website. It should be, and if it's not, it should be. And the old one should still be up too. And again, the old one looked like yours. It showed the wetlands mapping and where it's going to go and everything. So here's the preface of the first paragraph of the new plan. It said, in the fall of 2022, Warren Street completed a conceptual design for a new nursing home on the site known as the Hyder Field site. As part of early due diligence, we completed an archaeology study, historic review, and geotechnical test pits, and found the site suitable for construction. That's kind of where you guys are, I believe. That's kind of where you're at now. In the fall of 2022, and again, keep in mind the time frame, we didn't vote on this till December 5th. In the fall of 2022, we completed a field study of the property inclusive of wetlands mapping. Although to the layperson's eyes, the land appeared to be agricultural fields. You guys are not dealing with agricultural fields, you're dealing with swamp and woods. They were determined to have scattered wetlands throughout the proposed building site. Here you go, this is right where you guys are, but we were building it on a field. The wetlands impact was determined to be greater than 3 acres, which would require a major permit with U.S. Army Corps review, which would take a minimum of 2 years. Only after all of the civil engineering had been completed. On-site mitigation was deemed unreasonable and the financial penalty calculated at greater than $600,000 to be paid to the State Wetland Mitigation Fund. A conscious decision was made to explore other opportunity sites within the county farm property. This is what happened, folks. This is what happened. You don't know either what's going to happen. This is what happened to us at the county. And this was given to us August 15th. This is recent. This is serious. And I'm here to give you folks a warning. It happened to us, and it can happen to you. And I'm, again, not here to make a decision and tell you whether or not you need to build a school. But this is what the county's facing.
Can can I jump in there, Mr. Newton?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Didn't know any of that. So what I heard though is your due diligence, it was after they did the due diligence when they actually mapped the wetlands that they found stuff, oh, we didn't think this was a wetland, but it is. We're past that. We've already mapped the wetlands and we found a piece that we didn't think was wetlands that it is. It's the piece out front. We did find it. We've already had that, aha, there's something here we didn't know about. We're already past that moment, right? And we're still able to work with the site, even though we've got past that moment of, you know, preliminary, looks like the wetlands are here. Then when you actually go out and map and measure the wetlands, we find, okay, they're here and there's some here. So we've already moved beyond that. So we're, you know, in your timeline, I guess, when did they,
Yep.
it was October, I think, when they
It was
had
in the
their
fall
aha.
of '22, it says inclusive of wetland mapping.
Okay.
Inclusive of it, not exclusive of it.
So, there's why I'm struggling, so that a licensed land surveyor will create a plan that shows where all the wetlands are. And you're saying they did that, and then found more wetlands?
We paid $60,000 to have the conceptual plan done.
Yep.
And this new plan is on a much smaller platform. The old one was spread out, and the new one is five stories high. It's always easier to go up than out. And that new site, the wetland scientists drilled over 600 holes on the new site to make sure. I wasn't there, I don't know what they did with the old ones. We were given pretty much a plan similar to what you've gotten. And this is what, by doing due diligence and digging deeper so there's no surprises, absolutely no surprises, this is what happened. That it was like, hey, hold on, this is not a good site for the new nursing home. You guys have got to look at putting a new school there. What if? What if you go forward, and what if now you've got serious wetlands once you start digging, not test pits, but drilling the actual holes to check for the soil in the area where you're actually going to build. That's where the rubber hits the road. That's when it's serious, that you've got to ensure that what you've done is good. And we're not even there with the new, as far as I know, we're not even there with the new site. There's a lot more study that has to be done on that, as far as borings, how much clay is there and things like that. But the site we looked at was a hell of a lot better looking than what you guys are looking at for a site. If you want me to take questions, I'd be happy to. I'll answer them if I can.
Yeah, I have a question. So you mentioned that it was wetlands in excess of 3 acres at the site, and that was going to require...
Greater than 3 acres,
So-
which would be a major permit with U.S. Army Corps review. I'm going on what, this is an original intent document. I'm reading to everybody an original intent document. There's nothing I made up or created. This is, you can go on the county website and you should be able to see all of this.
So my question is, what is the threshold to have to go to this next level of approval that's involving up to $600,000? How many square feet is it?
Well, I'm not sure because the county gave up that idea, and the new site seems to be a lot better. Because they ditched that idea, because we didn't vote on it and move forward quickly to give them the bonding, they had time with, in this case, $6.2 million to go forward. Because we didn't want to stall the project, and as you know, these projects can take a couple of years before you start pouring concrete and making things. So we didn't want to completely stop it. And as a result of slowing it down to look at it better and say, don't start building and say, hey, we got a problem here. We got wetlands we got to mitigate. It's going to take 2 years to get the permit. So now, in our case, instead of a new nursing home being built in 3 or 4 years, it would have been 6 years or longer had we gone forward with it at the same site.
So what I'm hearing then is, I know that we have some wetlands we're going to need to cross, but what I'm hearing then is that we need to make sure that we know what that trigger point is as far as square footage of wetlands that we're crossing is before we proceed.
If I may, sir.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to quote you the exact numbers of the trigger points. I'll just give you my recollection of the many conversations we had with Ty and Bond about this. There are, I believe there's 3 levels of wetland impact. And there's also, there's different, wetlands in a farmer's field. Like a lot of times a farmer, what was a field, they would excavate an area and make some trench in that later became a wetland. And those are like low impact wetlands. And they grade the wetlands. They also grade them by what might live in there, whether it's snakes or turtles are pretty high on the list of things we want to protect here in New Hampshire. But the square footage piece, we're looking at an impact, I believe it's less than 10,000 square feet if we make that wetland crossing. And then there's another impact is somewhere over that, and then you get into the acreage. And that's where you trigger. Remember at the beginning of this process, we were talking about this property, and Corps of Engineers had said there's a project that can't be done on here. And that's because that project involved filling acre after acre after acre of jurisdictional wetland. Our impact in the site plan that you're looking at, it is very small. We're crossing the narrowest of three fingers, one roadway width to the northwest of the property, and one roadway width to the southeast of the property. So maybe 50 feet by 50 feet twice.
Good, thanks for your report.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, that's certainly something, as we continue to play around with this, that impact on the wetlands is something that is very much on the civil engineer's mind.
Thank you.
Sir.
And Honorable Representative, I could also add on that I'm currently doing the Allenstown School as one of my clients, and we did hit wetlands there. And one of the things that Representative mentioned was a $600,000 fee. So what we did there at Allenstown is it was determined that for the impact on the wetlands that we needed to do, the state's fee for that was $240,000. So we weren't happy to pay that because it seemed like one pocket was paying another pocket, but so the syntax, if you will, on that was $240,000. And when we weighed it, it was worth it. In the example that Representative used, it was $600,000, and that tipped the scale the other way. But there is the possibility to impact certain wetlands that you're not supposed to impact by paying what I call the so-called syntax. You're paying to be able to use up some of that area. But we have to decide what that dollar amount is if we ever got there. Our current design that we're doing does not anticipate that. Okay, so we want you to know that in the budget, I keep coming back, in the budget we're talking about, we're saying even though we have wetlands, we're not impacting them to an amount that would cause us to have to do anything like that. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll add one more thing to that. There are other options. The syntax can be cash, or it can be protecting other wetlands. And there would certainly be an opportunity for the city to say, well, we've heard so much about the wildlife that lives out in the back of this property and what a pristine, beautiful area it is. Let's just protect the back of the property in perpetuity. We'll designate that as a prime wetland and say that can never, ever, ever be touched, and that may offset the work that we did, or some other parcel that the city owns that's underwater, which is a lengthy list. Those parcels could be protected in other ways.
But an excellent summation.
Yeah, and I will just close in saying that cities in the county operates under Dillon's rule. You can't do anything the state doesn't let you do. So to say we're just going to tell the state we're going to mitigate some other wetlands, you may be able to, you may not be able to. That entirely depends upon the state of New Hampshire. So again, I'm only here to give you a warning, and I've done that. And I think the way you're running this meeting is very good. You're letting people speak. It's good because then that way bad ill doesn't fester and you get stuff out. And everybody in this room has an opinion that I value, and everybody should value it. The more you talk, the more you hear, and you can bounce things off each other. So I've done my job. I've given you my warning, and take it or leave it.
Thank you, Mr. Newton. Now, the one thing you just said that I think is really important for the public to hear, I want to underscore it, that we work under, we can't do anything that the state won't let us do. Like, we're going to build this to every standard and through, whether that's we're talking about light discipline or we're talking about water, all of the standards that have been set to protect the environment will be followed.
You have to.
We have to. We don't have a choice.
Good evening, Tom Kaczynski. I live on Whitehall Road. My property is almost adjacent to this. I'm a state rep also in Rochester. You may hear me legally shooting in my properties from time to time. You know, there was a couple, I jotted down a few things here from what I heard. And projects going over budget in Rochester, I've been following the government for several years, and there's plenty. But I'll give you a couple of say like the Gonic Fire Department started at $750,000. It ended up $1.3 million. The police station started at $2.2 million. They stopped counting at $5 million. So the bottom line is, once your foot's in the door, the project's not going to stop, and the taxpayer's going to pay. This is the facts of life. Now, sidewalks. I don't have all the information about that, but you can picture that's going to be a huge maze. That's going to be miles of sidewalks. That's expensive to construct. And again, this land, a lot of this is wetland type soil, poor soils. Now the city, it doesn't matter if the school department's got in the budget for the school, the city's going to pay. The city doesn't, well, in this city they do accumulate quite a few bucks, but we're going to pay. We're going to construct it, we're going to maintain it, which is different from where, when I lived in Connecticut one time, the people at that property maintained it, but for some reason we're Santa Claus up here. And plowing. And we got an army of plows already. As a matter of fact, they had a couple of serious problems with newly purchased ones from a foreign country. These are going to be huge costs, and we're the ones paying for it. Years ago, there was discussion of road improvements on Salmon Falls Road. And what I remember about that, there was a lot of objection from people that we couldn't even knock down these trees there because they were historic. So I don't know how it's going to play in with sidewalks, if you're going to put them on the other side of the trees or in eminent domain, take the properties, I don't know. Like I say, my property's almost adjacent. And in fact, I was looking into purchasing this property if it did join mine. My property is in a swampy area. It's the same area. I walked in back there. Took a long trip one day back there. And I have a huge paved area for my business. It's like a parking lot. And I can tell you, that wasn't wetlands, but it was this same type of environment here. And even with huge amounts of gravel base, the pavement doesn't hold up in this area. And I can't see where you're not going to run into big problems with that, with the amount of pavement there'll have to be for the school. And that skinny entrance coming in, I mean, it is kind of an odd property in a way. And I just picture, I drive trucks in my line of work, and I think about large school buses wheeling in, and it doesn't seem like the optimum property. And it's too bad to be rushing into this, I guess, because you're chasing the COVID money or whatever money there is. I would have thought a better property should be found. Now, I don't know if this was discussed because I came in a little late, but maybe on a different line, I'm kind of concerned, how's this going to affect performance of the students? In 1990, I moved to Rochester, and this was designated a district in need of improvement. Now, what is it now? Are we an excellent? Are we at the top of the line in New Hampshire? I'm sure I would have seen that somewhere in the news if that was the case. So, we recently built the East Rochester School for several million. Do we have improved test scores with that school? Is there high proficiency in that school? And if not, I mean, how do you justify these expenses? Just to have bricks and mortar, you know? I know people that are involved with private schools and other methods of teaching that don't have as fancy buildings as you're talking about here, and they get excellent results. And You guys are in the education business. This is what we should be getting better results. And are you expecting that in the new school? Is that are the schools we have now holding kids back? The other thing I get some disappointment is that, so you're gonna close 2 schools and open 1 new one. So in a net, you're only gonna have one school closed. We'll still have 8 elementary schools in Rochester. That's too much. I mean, look at Dover, similar population, similar school population's got 3 elementary schools. So as a taxpayer, I think that's unacceptable. And as far as I knew, I thought it was originally discussed that to do this project, 3 schools would be closed. And I don't know what changed since then, but anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do any of the JBC members have any comments or questions? Well, with that, then, I guess we can wrap it up. I'll remind people of the date for the JBC meeting. 28th, right?
September 13th.
September 13th. Today's 28th.
September 13th.
Had 28th in my mind. So September 13th, the JBC will convene in this room. And thank you all very much for coming out. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and questions. And thank you, elect JBC members. Good night.